We have a mix of meetups as well as webinars, and this is a webinar, and because of that, we're recording it. Yeah, we are 3 sites. We are, I already told Brigid that we are as a brand in business since 2018. But a number of you in this meeting know that I've been around since 2006 doing this, and a few others are also there since that time. So this is a really nice group of people. 3 sites builds communities for a living, from strategy all the way to delivering technology, and ultimately also making sure the community program becomes a success. And we are partnering with Variant, with Higher Logic, with Insighted and Vanilla as technology vendors. And today we have an Insighted customer and not a Variant customer like the last time. But we are technology agnostic. Now, as a community manager, it's always something we ask our members to tell a little bit about themselves. So here's 15 seconds about me. I'm a avid triathlete from a long time ago, and I still ride my bike because after some years, you need to give up on the other things. I'm a family man. I'm a self-taught musician, and ultimately I have a runaway hobby called aviation. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about you and what we do for you. And like I said, we have this community leaders series where we offer webinars, and we basically want to have a high quality conversation between community managers and making sure that whatever a community manager is struggling with, that we get those answers. And if community managers don't share knowledge, then you should not be a community manager, I think. And we all agree to that. We have monthly meetups. So that's every last Thursday, one hour online, where we just address the topics that are on your mind. So just bring your topics and your friends, and we'll just make sure that the other people start working on them. And that's a voluntary work. We facilitate that. And ultimately, we also have a Slack channel where we communicate quickly with each other, and we also make sure that you can network and find other people quickly. We facilitate this because we believe in this model of give and share. But enough about 3 sites and enough about me, certainly. The floor is, in this case, for Brigid Colver. We met a couple of months ago because we are also partnering with Insighted in this case. And we heard the story of Brigid, and I said, hey, can you please tell your story? Because what we see is usually a community has done something or started to support, let's say, activities beyond the sales point. But what if you plan a community that from the get-go to also include lead generation? And this is why I thought this story was interesting. It's always an interesting story, but this is definitely a topic that not everybody does, and it's very nice to hear the story of Brigid. So, Brigid, can I invite you to take over and let me stop sharing?
Of course, thank you. Thanks everyone for joining today. I'm excited to talk this through. While I share my screen, please don't hesitate to interrupt. And I can't see your faces now that I'm sharing. So just come off mute, speak up, alert Wilfried, and we'll go from there. But the point of building a customer success and lead gen community, how to make everyone happy, is really to meet multiple audiences where they're at. So a little bit about me. I have a fairly long history now in customer success. I've worked at SAP SuccessFactors, so have some history with Germany over there. Worked for Glint, which is now part of LinkedIn, and Microsoft, and then for a brief time, specifically for LinkedIn, the hiring and talent products. And now I'm at a company called involve.ai. I think of community as a lot more than the peer-to-peer interaction. I really love how platforms like all of those that 3 Sides partners with do more than just forums and really support like a full multi-channel experience for customers and non-customers alike. This is my second time using Insighted because they really get that. They're, I think, at the forefront of being a customer success center more than just a community site. I live in Michigan. I'm very proud of that. If you haven't been, I know it's not like the shining beacon of why people visit the US, but it's a beautiful state in the summer. I love the outdoors, love the lake, gardening, hiking, running. I'm not a triathlete, maybe someday. And then I have 3 little kids, so if you do hear some shrieking or yelling in the background, I apologize in advance. As for my company, involve.ai is a little hard. I think I'm still getting my own head around what we do. I've been with the company for about 2 months, and we're building a new category. So you've heard of CRM, customer experience management. We partner with systems like that, but the idea is to unlock all of the data that different customer systems are producing, make it visible and unified, and then through the use of AI, artificial intelligence, create predictions and automated customer health scores so that customer success managers, account managers, sales reps can look at a single dashboard and say, these customers are at risk. Based on all of the data feeding into the system, I can see that these customers are at risk. These ones might buy more. And then we also recommend actions to take advantage of those situations. So our motto, goodbye uncertainty, hello clarity. It's all about not just seeing customer data, but having true customer intelligence. We've only been around for a year. So Involve started, I think, in February or March last year as Involve AI. They were doing something completely different and then pivoted early last year and have since grown quite a bit. So we're now at 53 employees, but we're still in that startup phase, which is really fun. And this is a big part of the reason that we are using our community for lead gen and not just for customers. First of all, we really see ourselves as creating a new category here. And so if you've heard of like Kleenex was the category creator for tissue, and now we call all tissue Kleenex, or at least I do. Or like Band-Aids. We call bandages Band-Aids, even though that's a brand. Involve AI wants to be that for customer intelligence. We really want to be the leader of this category. And so we feel the need to use our community in a very public way to grow recognition of what customer intelligence is. Additionally, we're extremely young. We're still very much in startup mode. And so we need to use every channel at our disposal to identify leads, to support prospects in their journey. This quote here from 3 Sides, after they invited me to speak, I was looking them up, and I absolutely love this. Prospects do 80% of homework online. I do, personally. I'm much more likely to see everything I can anonymously before reaching out in a way that I know is going to peg me for emails and demos. So we have an opportunity with our community to really lead people into that sales funnel, and then also to support them at the bottom of the funnel by giving them insight into what some of our customers are experiencing and how well we're supporting those customers. So any questions before I move on to more of the tactical, how we're doing this, intending to do it?
A question from me, Brigid. So I presume that you were brought on to lead this charge, if you will. So that must mean your executive team had this in their mind from the get-go, right? Or was it something you needed them to convince?
Yeah, so actually our executive team, I wouldn't say was so familiar with the concept of community one way or another, with the exception of my manager, who I've worked with for many years. And we've always used community specifically for customers. However, when she was explaining to them the need for community, our co-founders were extremely excited about the idea of using it for evangelism and for category building. So not necessarily lead gen, but for the first part of what I was talking about there. So I didn't need to convince them of this purpose. I think where maybe we've had to have some conversations and we'll continue having conversations is what we make public versus what we don't. And that's always been something that's held us up from doing this at previous companies, is the concern of making content public that might be seen as like special sauce. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah, thanks.
All right, so how am I going about this? How is my company going about this? I'm sure you have all heard about and talked about the concept of shared value. I love that for community management, and I go back to it constantly with like all the decisions that I make as a community builder. But in this case, it's not necessarily the business and customer shared value. It's the, is this valuable to customers and to prospects? And the way that I'm approaching it is customer first. I am on the customer success team, and so the most important thing to me is that we are meeting customers' needs with the community we build. But I'm keeping that public view, that prospect in mind with everything that we're writing, creating, delivering. We are making all content public at this point. We are requiring registration. I think that's important because, as you may have encountered, I know I have, if you have public forums without a registration, you might get like bots, which is no fun for anybody. But we're not limiting it to like customer permissions. I believe Insighted's own community does it this way, so I have someone to learn from there. And the reason we're doing this is that even things that are like really specific to customers, I imagine that prospects might see those things and think, look how well they support the people who partner with them. And then finally, and this is where I'm going to spend the bulk of our time, I have two community philosophies that I'm trying to think through how they apply to both the customer side and the prospect side. So the first is what I shared at the beginning. I think of community sites as having so much more potential than just that peer-to-peer forum. And of course, it depends on your goals. So I'm not saying that like everyone should make them that way. But for us as a B2B SaaS company, I really value the ability of a community site to be a multi-channel experience, to integrate the search across training sites and knowledge bases and community conversations, to include events. And so I'll show you a little sneak peek at our soft launch in a bit and how we're thinking about that. And so applying that concept to both customers, again, customer first, but also leads. And then community itself, and Wilfried and I were just talking about this at the beginning of the call, community is about more than a site even. So expanding beyond the Insighted platform to our own events and to the communications that we use to draw people into the community site. How do we invite both prospects and customers into those pieces?
Can I ask a question, Brigid?
Please.
So you have an opportunity as a software vendor to combine two IP flows. So the one is the IP of the software and the other one is the IP of knowledge. Are you planning to integrate the community into the product again? Is that part of your strategy?
So Insighted has a cool functionality. I think a couple of the vendors do this. I think Higher Logic has the opportunity to do this as well. You can implement an in-product widget. We aren't doing that right at launch, but down the road it is something that I would like to do. It's a way of bringing more of that like how-to material and any conversation about specific parts of the product right to where the user is. So is that what you're asking?
Yeah, and the second question is then, do you have the same structure in your community as you have in your product, so that people can recognize where they are in the community compared to what you have in the product?
Not the same structure. We're using very similar branding, iconography. We had the same designers participate in the build. But just by virtue of what the product is, it wouldn't be structured the same.
Okay, good, thanks.
So this slide is just an example of that shared value concept for customers and prospects or leads. Using the different channels available in Insighted, I did some thinking around what would the value be to a customer of a section of peer highlights or storytelling? What will the value be to customers around our knowledge base and the type of content that would live in there? Roadmap, community forums. There are many more, but I didn't want this slide to be overwhelming. And then I thought through, what would a prospect get out of this? Can I put myself in those shoes? And the reason I did this is twofold. One is it helps me design the content or ask for whoever's creating content to design it in a way that meets both audiences. But two is really getting that buy-in from marketing and product to be able to say, here's the value of every single section of our community to leads and the way that we can see this benefiting leads, and also what are we missing? What do you see? How could we design it even better? So I think it's really important not just to have it in mind, but to document examples of how you see it working.
So a question for me again, sorry, you're triggering a lot of questions with me. So is it, do you have an objective to have sort of a contribution to the pipeline with your community as one of your objectives?
Contribution from who?
Sales. How many? I presume you need to generate a number of leads coming through the community or assisted by the community. Is that the way you measure it?
Are you asking about the number of individuals coming in or content creation?
Individuals, people.
We haven't set any metrics around it. That's a really good question and not something that I've given thought to. Right now, I'm actually trying to figure out the best way to measure people who aren't registered, but just visiting, because I've never done a public community before. We've always had it private where you have to register to see anything. So I had that conversation with Insighted just yesterday. How do we identify if people are exploring the community since we're not requiring them to register? And they gave me some suggestions within the platform and through the use of Google Analytics. And I'm thinking probably 6 months down the road, as things are more established, we'll start to have those conversations with marketing and sales about what do we need to see or what should we measure so we can see if changes in what you're doing are driving up those visits, or if those visits are driving up your numbers and your pipeline. Yep. But right now we're not there.
Go ahead.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one question actually, Brigid. I was just curious because I was just having a look at your website while you were talking about this there, just to see if I could find the community, and I can't. So I was just wondering whether that's an issue you have with the company and trying to get the community promoted in a better way than it currently was when you first came.
No, not at all. So the reason you can't find it is we're in the middle of our soft launch right now. We are not live until next Thursday. So I'm going to share with this special group the link to our community. I would love you to explore and let me know what you think.
Bring it on, bring it on.
When we go live, we will be linking it out from the website and the product. And interlinking between all three of those sites and applications. But I have not been trying to improve that because it hasn't existed until right now. But I love that you are looking for it. That's great. All right, so the second philosophy applied to both audiences is that community expands beyond simply a website, right? And I think I got a laugh out of Wilfried from my pun here, but we think of community as having three sides. The site, I always consider the backbone. That's where I spend the bulk of my energy as a community manager because it is so self-serve. And that's going to be where we're combining those audiences. But I also think communications are really important to a successful community. So a cadenced monthly email or quarterly comm summarizing some of the content and resources that we're building, just to pull people back in, because I don't think the majority of users are like, what's going on in the community today? That would be great. I don't think it's happening. But when you tell them, hey, this conversation is happening, that can spur interest. The way we're approaching that to not overwhelm people with communications is that we're splitting customers out from leads. Marketing already runs a communication, and so what we'll start to do is send them content from the community to include in their monthly newsletter, saying like, news from the community. And then I will start a monthly newsletter specific to customers. And that will help us to really tailor some of the more customer-centric content to them. So here's what came out in the release, and how to use it is going to be more interesting to customers than to that marketing audience. Similarly with events, right now we're actually not going to run any customer-only events other than we have an advisory board. So we're going to let marketing maintain all of those for both leads and customers, but in time, when we have a big enough customer base, we will start having customer-specific community events so that they can talk a little more tactically about use of the product. So any questions?
Yeah, Brigid, a question, but I heard somebody else speaking. Maybe they should go first. Was that you, Harold, who was speaking? No? Okay, so I have a question, Brigid. You said I'm going to send out, split out customers from prospects and have targeted types of messages. But how does that tie in with the notification system that is already running from the community? I mean, I'm sure you don't want to repeat what everybody already subscribed to. So how do you want to do that?
Good question. I haven't seen in my past roles, I haven't seen a ton of subscription happening. Other than like I followed a comment or I wrote something and I'm getting a response directly to what I wrote. So more often than not, I will just choose 2 to 3 conversations that are engaged, that are already seeing a number of people respond, and let everybody know. And if people are subscribed, I don't think it hurts for them to see that in the context of a newsletter with other resources that maybe they haven't seen. The bigger thing is I can also highlight questions that don't have any responses. And usually I'll see some sort of response from those. All of this that I'm saying is based on another company. I have not started any of this at Involve, so ask me again in a couple months how it's working and my answer might change.
We'll do that.
But I'm coming into it from that bias that it can only help.
Yep, right, clear.
All
Any
right.
other question? There are some silent people. Don't be shy. This is your Kodak moment.
Especially because, again, I don't know what I'm doing. This is what we're doing. Yeah. It's not necessarily the way. So would love feedback as well. I did want to talk a little bit about working with marketing and sales, and I've had it very easy at Involve because they have been super collaborative. But I did want to address some of the ways that I think I've helped that along, both here and at former companies. One is they're not adversaries. Like, they're just not. You're on the same company, the same team. So just build those relationships. It's all about relationships and not just one-time joining a sales call, but making it a quarterly or a monthly meeting to talk about how the community can support their work. So again, showing that shared value map and saying, do you see other ways that we can be more helpful to generating leads or supporting the bottom of the funnel when you're pointing leads to the community? We had to have, and we're still having, conversations on this shared ownership section about, we have a website and we have a public community. What's the difference? Why would we post something to one and not the other? And we've come to, I think, a pretty good separation of what exists where. And we'll tweak that over time as the community's live and we start seeing more content rolling in. But we feel good about where we've landed on that together.
So what's the delineation for that? I mean, how do you determine that?
So for us, we have, let me back up. What I proposed to the marketing team, especially when we're talking about customer stories, because the website wants to highlight great customer case studies, but so does the community. So what I proposed is that we use customer stories in the first person, highlighting individual community members. Opinions in the community are individual community members. A community is a gathering of individuals. And so anything that's like, I'm posting as the CS leader in my company would be community content. Now we can take that content with the permission of customers and turn it into more of a third-party, polished case study or story for the website. But the community is going to be anything that's individualized or first person.
Excellent. Yeah.
And that works for us so far. But again, it might not be the same for every company. Yeah. We're also seeking for marketing to support us with content, for sales to support us by writing in their own first person, writing responses to questions or tagging people. They're part of the community too. And I'm just going to address the elephant in the room, which is, what if people post things they don't like about your product or your company? So that's why I wrote, listen to their concerns. I know that's a huge concern for marketing, especially. All I can say is that in my experience with professional communities, people recognize that they are representing a company. And so I've never seen trolling, like true mean-spirited posting, because people are professional in the communities I've run. Again, ask me in a month. Maybe this one will be different. I hope not. But you've also probably all heard the adage that if you respond well to a negative comment or negative feedback, it can actually turn customers around so much more positively. And so that's what I've been sharing with our marketing and sales team, is that I don't know yet what people will be posting. I'm very aware of their concerns and will be willing to adjust. But at this point, let's see what people have to say. And if those things are negative, let's address them. We know what we're working on. We know what customers' feedback is, and we know how to embrace that feedback with what's coming or how we're willing to work with them. So again, we'll see in a couple months how that's going, but right now I've only seen from customers I've spoken with about the community excitement about asking questions and sharing stories.
Yeah, so question for me, Brigid. We've done research amongst the group that you are talking to here in the past, and we saw this dichotomy between a sender-dominant marketing team and a receiver-dominant community team, which kind of clashes, and where we see a lot of resistance from marketing and sales teams to participate in the community. In your experience from previous companies, did you ever see that also happening? I see Harold nodding, of course, but The people, there are quite a few people here who've been around for quite a long time. Did you see that in the past? And how was it so easy to convince the marketing team to participate in this community? What's the secret sauce here?
I don't think it's fair, secret sauce. So 2 questions there. Have I experienced that in the past? A little. I've never run a public community. So marketing has always been kind of willing to support with messaging, but mostly just hands off and like, oh, they're over there doing that in customer success. At my last company, I did open part of our community to the public to support sales. They were really excited about it. We kept a gate in place past a certain point. So we had like role-based support, and then any links you clicked on if you weren't a customer, you could not access. But the idea was to give that hint to leads about, look at all of the support you would unlock if you became a customer. So sales was actually really excited. I've never had any problem getting sales on board. They're only happy to give customers and prospects something more to work with and look at. Marketing was more hands-off, just less interested because it wasn't really affecting their day-to-day. When I did go live or public with that piece of the site, we did have to do that delineation discussion, and we came to a good place there about what would be communal versus website. Here, it has been, I've had the best collaboration with marketing, and I attribute it to a couple of things. One, we're working at a startup. Everything we can do to support lead gen is welcomed. Like, everyone's wearing so many hats that they think of me as part of the family. I think of them as part of the family. 2, a lot of the individuals at the company are really young, and so a lot more comfortable with the concepts of online community, threads. I'm one of the older people at my company. And so I suspect that plays into it as well, is there's not the like history of kind of seeing these things come to life. They've just always been in a workforce where communities have been a thing. That's just a guess. No one has told me that, but I suspect that's part of it. So I don't think I have any good secret sauce to share about how to. I think I've been lucky at Involve to work with a great marketing and sales team that understand the value. I do think if I'm going to give any advice, it's this very first piece here of talk often. Just keep talking and build that trust and relationship if you don't have it with individuals on those teams. Because if you can see that shared value between the company, the customer, the prospects, and you can document it and show it, like, what is there not to get on board with?
All right. Excellent.
And I think that is it for my slides. So if we have time, I would to show you our community.
Yes. Drum roll, drum roll, drum roll.
All right. So the link is simply city.involve.ai, and I will copy that into the chat here. We are calling it the city because, again, I want to get away from talking about it as the community, which I think for a lot of people indicates, oh, it's just peer-to-peer chatter. That is an important piece of it, but it's so much more. So we've got our library and our cafe and our town hall and our news station, and of course our event center. And we've been seeding content for a number of weeks now from different individuals. Something I love that you can do with Insighted, by the way, is post on behalf of other people so that it's not just like a list of things that I've written or my team has written, but we really do have the support of a number of teams here. So you can search. Sorry, go for it. Any questions? I'm nervous.
The first thing I'm seeing And what personally I don't like is what do you call it? Not real people names, like involve CM or something like that.
Oh yeah, that's me too.
Is that a deliberate choice to have alternative names, or is it something you might not have given any thought?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. That's the name that I chose for myself during the setup, and then I didn't really think about it again. But I love that you call it out, because I think you're right. Like on second thought, like it does look sort of robotic.
For our community, it's a deliberate choice to have it linked only to a My account. Like we have the community I run have a My Nevi account, which is basically for customers, but it's also a free account, and that allows us to only have real people names. So it also blocks bots and spam accounts. So it works both ways, because people talk to people. And if you're Wilfried 123 and it doesn't invite me to connect with Wilfried.
No.
So is it like a third-party software you're talking about that blocks that?
No, it's we only allow real people to register a My account. It's not any software, but it. Well, obviously you can if you register, you can use a fake name and a fake email address, but we'll filter that out pretty easy, because we're not really big. We have about, I think, 7,000 members or something like that. So we'll filter them out easily. But it's a sort of a gatekeeper for blocking spam accounts and bots and fake accounts.
Right. So for the next meetup, that's a good topic for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're almost out of time. Anybody else that may have questions? Because we are really going to make sure we are stop on time. Anybody else?
I have one.
Not a question about the community.
Hold on. Can you repeat, Paul?
Yeah, I was saying just one question, which, and perhaps I missed it, but what is the main reason that your customers come to this community?
So it will be, when we go live, to find, I'd say primarily to find the resources that will help them be successful with the software. That's usually my approach to customer success community, is to start with the documentation, the trainings, and the videos that they need to be successful, and then stay for some of that communal interaction, peer-to-peer interaction, and stories. That's usually how I imagine they're going to primarily come in. Some might be more attracted by hearing other customers' stories, but I spend the bulk of my time on the resources.
And then once those customers to the community, how do you go about converting them to a lead?
Can you repeat that?
I'm just curious. Yeah, how would you then go about converting those customers into a lead? I'm just wondering how. I mean, we are predominantly a community which is busiest, where people come for technical support. That's why they come, because they're stuck and they have a problem. And one of the barriers that we've always had when we've engaged with our customers is if they think we sell them something. And so we've had to be very careful about trying to make sure. So it hasn't been a case of trying to encourage marketing sales to come in. We've actively kept them out because we didn't want them to go in and try this. And so I'm just wondering how you strike that balance, because if you're going to convert them into leads, presumably somebody from sales has to speak to them.
So I think about that the other way around. I'm not thinking about converting customers into leads. I'm thinking about converting leads into customers, mainly by supporting our customers so well. So we're making that support for our customers public. We're making those conversations and those highlights so public, and we want to excite people who are exploring anonymously or who are at the bottom of the funnel to reach out, book a demo, and become one of those customers.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thanks, Paul. And we are out of time, and I'm a strict master of time. Brigid, I really want to thank you for taking the time and the trouble to present to this. I also want to thank everybody here in this call again for these valuable contributions. Everybody here is almost a long-time friend once in a while. If some new faces, and the new faces are more than happy to join. I have one closing slide. Let me share my screen with you. The next meetup is a regular meetup on May 26. Everybody who is already a member has that in the agenda. If you want to join, then it's free for everybody who wants to join that. And our next webinar, that's a session like this one, is August 25. Nobody will show up in June and July, so we're not going to even try that. And then I hope to see you soon. And thank you for your time. I will stop the recording. And I wish you a very, very pleasant evening ahead of you. And then look forward to seeing you again in the next meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.